Welcome to WAMD, the We Are Motor Driven podcast.
Hello and welcome to yet another podcast here on We Are Motor Driven. Today's podcast is entitled Leave It on the Track. Yes, and for all of us in this room, we really love driving cars fast, and I've seen some of your YouTube videos. Some of you are doing that on the street where it isn't really that safe nor legal. There is a place that you can take a car that you have that is fast, that is capable, and wring all of that performance out safely and legally, and that would be at a racetrack.
You know, Brendan, you can even take a car that isn't built to go fast and wring it out completely.
That's actually almost more fun.
On a racetrack.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That is absolutely true. I stand corrected. But it's where, the question sort of is like, where do you get started? So let's say you do want to have some fun in your car. What's the best way to do that? I think for me at least, I know I started, and a lot of people start in autocross. And in case you've never heard of autocross before, that is essentially going to a very large and open parking lot, sometimes airports, sometimes there's dedicated sort of mini tracks, like Tire Rack has one of them in South Bend, Indiana. And you are able to drive your car fast through a twisty-turny course.
Cone course.
Course.
Of cones.
Yes.
And sort of the worst that could happen to you is you might hit a bunch of cones. One might get stuck under your car.
Stuck under your car.
And the worst I've seen people have problems is when they bring really old cars that they haven't really maintained very well to an autocross. They might break a drive shaft. So as long as your car is in good mechanical condition, this is a great way to get started. You put a helmet on. You are timed.
Yep, it's all timed.
And what it really helps you to start to learn is car control in a very fast setting where you are putting maximum stress, maximum brakes, maximum acceleration, maximum lateral turning. And how does the car react? How does the weight transfer? What should you be doing at what time with your hands and your feet? And if you mess it up, it's okay. Most of these places will also offer to help you and put somebody in the right seat with you and give you some instruction. And kind of best of all of that, so that's a great way to start. It's also the easiest on your car.
Yeah, because the speeds really never exceed 45, 50. Maybe if there's like a longer straightaway, you can get up to 60, 65. But as far as the turns go, you're really never going more than, 45, 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's typically a tighter course, a shorter, tighter course, but it doesn't feel that way.
No, it feels like you're flying.
Because it's tight and because the cones are there and because you have a lot of different corners and radiuses that you're dealing with through it, it really does feel like you're flying, and maybe you're going 45 miles an hour, but it's a lot of fun. You get the adrenaline going while you're doing it, and it does. It teaches you car control. It teaches you braking. It teaches you how to accelerate, especially if you want to be quick, because that's all about maintaining momentum,
right?
Which is really the important thing.
And it's hard.
And it's
autocrossing is hard.
Very
it
hard,
sounds like you're thinking, if you've never done it and you're picturing this in your head right now, it's a bunch of cones in a parking lot. Ooh. Yeah, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Because it's challenging.
It is very challenging. And who you go with will make it either more or less challenging too. Because if you are, let's say you're going with a Corvette club, they're going to set that course up with a little more on the straightaways and a little more on like a gentle turn. If you go with a Miata club, they're going to, and you show up with a bigger car, they're going to torture you with these tiny little gates that only their little cars can fit in. And so you'll be hitting a lot of cones or you'll be getting very close to it. But I will say, I do go with a Miata club autocrossing all the time, and it really teaches you precision. I mean, some of these gates, it's like my Grand Sport will only in the back fit if I am perfect. Yeah. So you got to be perfect. If you guys want to see sort of what an autocross day kind of looks like, we'll post a link to, I've got some great video of just a really, just a run, like a 56-second run. And these aren't long. So usually you're out there for like 30 to 30 seconds to like a minute 10. It might be that's a really long autocross run. And they're available kind of all over the place. If you
But
just
you get to
search,
do it multiple times. Too.
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So I should kind of, basically here's how they put you usually in run groups. It's, 1, 2, or 3 run groups. And you line up your car and you come up to the line. The car in front of you kind of gets halfway or a little more than halfway through the course, and then they say go. And that's when you go, you trip some light timers, and you run yourself through the course. The rules are going to be different. You hit a cone, it might cost you 2 seconds on a penalty.
That's a lot of time.
Porsche Club will disqualify you for hitting cones because they're really lazy. They don't want to pick up cones. So when you're not driving, though, you're either resting or you're working. So then you get to go out, and this is actually the fun thing. People are like, "Oh, it's working." No, it's
a lot of fun. Actually,
it's actually a lot of fun because you get to go out to a corner station where you're going to be calling in people hitting cones by their car numbers, and and you will also be able to look and see what is everybody else doing,
what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong,
right, and you learn almost as much from just watching people out on the course as you do in your own car.
Right.
But a great way to get into it. It's not hard on your brakes. It's really not that hard on your tires, although it can be depending on your level. But this is kind of the thing that you could show up to in a street car without changing the brake pads, without changing the brake fluid. Just because you'll finish, you'll do like, depending on how busy it is, you might get 5 runs in a session. You might get 10 runs in a session. And so in between there, you're waiting in line, so your car gets to cool off. And then you park it for a little bit. You go do your work. You go do your rest. You come back. You usually have an afternoon session. So you're out there for 10 to 20 times a day.
And also it's timed. And when you get to the end, you see your time.
Yeah.
So you know what to do to improve the next run.
Right. You immediately see exactly how you did. And it's just, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of camaraderie because you're out there with other car guys. And
it's a
car
bonding
girls.
experience. It's great.
If you need a torque wrench to
Unless
make sure
you're the Corvette guy at a Miata club.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
They're nice to you, though.
Yeah. But you know what? All car guys are nice.
That's
true.
true.
I mean, and you get to see some really cool stuff show up. I mean, I've seen 50s cars show up. I've seen Nash's run at an autocross. I've seen just the old Porsches. Really, really neat.
You know you're
things.
in trouble when someone shows up with a Lotus Super 7.
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. You know, and my first car was the X19. We talked about this on a different episode. My biggest regret is I didn't know anything about autocross when I had that car. That car would have been phenomenal at an autocross.
That was front-wheel drive, right?
No, rear wheel.
It was
mid-engine, rear-wheel drive.
Then yes, it would have been fantastic.
Light. It was like a go-kart, right? I would have beat everybody.
But you were too late. You can go get another one.
I go get another one. But I didn't know anything about it. So if you're out there, you're listening to this, you're like, what the heck is an autocross? And you have any interest in driving, this is where you start, I think. For me, this is for my money. See if you like it. Your investment will be a helmet and maybe like some stickers for your door to put a number on.
Yep.
And these are not expensive to enter. So you're usually spending like 40, maybe 50, $60. And that's it. You got a whole day's worth of fun in your car, and you're going to learn a lot. You're going to meet a lot of cool people, and that's where you start, I think.
Yeah, great. And then the next step is road. Tracks, race tracks.
Actual tracks.
Yeah.
And there's some really cool things out there too I want to touch on. So a lot of manufacturers that make performance cars offer performance driving schools.
Yeah.
Yes.
For a limited time only, it seems, because so many of these cars.
First year of ownership kind of thing.
Right.
Like I was very
First
fortunate.
owner, too.
Yep, first owner. Cadillac has a performance driving school for Blackwing owners. And so this last year, I went out to Spring Mountain Motorsports Ranch to give them a plug because that place is amazing.
And that's in
Brennan,
Pahrump,
I know
Nevada.
you've been there.
Yes, it's in
I've
Pahrump,
been
Nevada,
there.
about an hour
outside of Vegas.
west of Vegas. Beautiful area.
And you stay right at the track. There's condos there. There's a chef and a restaurant right there. So it's 2 days on the track with professional instructors. And it's all radio stuff, so it's lead follow. And they'll put you into groups by speed if you've never done track stuff before. Don't worry. Take advantage of this because you're going to have professional instruction on a real racetrack in a car that can handle it. And this is not your own car. This is now taking the manufacturer's car and really seeing what you bought can do.
Right.
BMW does it. Their school in South Carolina is great. They also have the one out in outside of Palm Springs.
Yeah, the thermal. Actually, I'm going there in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and great instruction. You work with people who really know the product, and they can assess your skill level very quickly and
Amazing.
give you steps, real concrete steps you can take to get faster and faster.
I did the Corvette one twice because I ended up buying 2 C7 Corvettes. So I was out there for a 2-day and a 3-day. So I've if you get invited to go to Spring Mountain,
Go.
You would be clinically insane not to go. Let me just put it. That's how strongly I would recommend you go. Gotta go. It's amazing. The whole facility is amazing. The instructors are amazing. I believe the head instructor's name is Tom Malone. Really fantastic guy. We have a video on our old YouTube Sons of Speed channel where we have a whole, just a really nice long video about the whole experience. But the amazing thing is he will be in a lead follow. There'll probably be 2 or 3 other people in your group in addition to the instructor who's in front. Then you're going to hear over the radio just the craziest things, like, you're the last person in line and they'll be calling out to you like, oh, you missed that last apex. And it's like, how this guy is driving, and sometimes they're driving Camaros in the Corvette group and they're not even driving Corvettes, and they're like way in front. Nobody can catch them. They're driving amazingly. They're hitting everything. Like they're driving with their eyes closed because they got their eyes in the rearview mirror.
Yep.
And they're watching everybody else and telling them what they're doing wrong over the radio. So they got one hand on a radio and you're just like, huh? How you
Working
doing?
to keep up.
I remember that experience specifically when I did a BMW X6M launch at Circuit of the Americas, and I'm in this, giant 600 horsepower SUV trying to keep up with Bill Oberlin.
5,000 pounds.
Trying to keep up with Bill Oberlin, who is, the winningest driver in IMSA history. And like you said, he's got one eye on the track, one eye on the rearview mirror, one hand on the wheel, one hand on the walkie-talkie, and he's not
chewing
even
gum. No.
He's not breathing hard. And I'm doing
he's eating a sandwich.
And I'm doing all I can to keep up with him. But
Your
one of-
headscarf is soaked through.
one thing that I will recommend if you do a track day like that and you've never been on a track before, or you've never been on that track before, hop in the right seat with the instructor first.
Yes.
Ride the track with him. Then you can see the turn-in points, understand where the apex is. He'll talk about braking points, or she will talk about braking points and all that. Do that first.
That is the prime way to do that.
Yeah.
Another thing you can do doing your homework going up to an event like this is watch videos. There's
Right.
so many. There's pretty much a video for probably
Pretty
every
track
track
out
out
there, yes.
that
Yeah.
somebody's
Yeah.
put on, and probably a
'Cause
point of view video, so you can at least experience it.
Understand the racing line. Yeah,
And
that's
look
the
at
most
the track
important
map.
thing. Yeah.
All of them will have websites with track maps
Yep.
on there. Look at the track map. But as Harvey said, absolutely, if you have the opportunity to sit right seat as a passenger with a pro who can talk you through that track,
Yep.
Oh, it's
you will learn
golden.
so much.
I did that recently with the Subaru WRX ST, whatever they just did.
TS, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the new tuned by STI. Yeah, TS. We were at Sonoma, and I'd never driven that track
Oh, good
before.
track.
Great
but
track,
they had
great
Scott
track.
Speed right there.
Oh, come on.
Scott, and that's his home track. So I said, Scott, could I hop in with you? And man, are you kidding? To get to ride on his home track in
Scott,
a car
I will
like
pay
that.
you. Can I ride with you?
He was, and it was great because
Best way to do
he totally taught me that track in 2 laps.
That's awesome.
And Jennifer, I'll add one more thing to looking up the videos and looking at the track map. If you are a gamer and you have a game with that track on there, those things are mapped exactly. You could literally drive the track before you get to the track and at least learn, like, okay, here's where you want to brake. Maybe here's what this, here's how really sharp this turn is. So
Here's what the corkscrew really looks
yeah,
like.
exactly. So you can get into a lot of prep work, which will help, I think, when you get
It
there.
does.
Kinda
Do your homework.
Yeah, just
your
doing a
homework.
little bit of your homework there. And I can't say enough for getting into a right seat or having an instructor get in your right seat, especially if they're very familiar with their track. It's their home track, right? So
Yep.
we're up here close to Road America. If you could get in with someone like Josh Bolicki or Camden Murphy or someone who's really, that's sort of like where they grew up driving.
Yep.
they will tell you things about that track that
Invaluable.
It just you'll jump leaps and bounds ahead of people who are showing up with the same level of experience as you are. Now, we talked about the going to a manufacturer event. Porsche also does these things as well.
Ford.
So, and Ford used to do them when they had
No,
cars.
Ford still does.
Oh,
with
they
the
have with the
Mustangs.
Mustangs. Sorry,
Yeah, the Mustangs, yeah.
My
Yep.
apologies to Ford.
They also have it with the Broncos now
Right.
for
The
off-road.
off-rodeo
which is-
stuff.
which you take advantage of all of them. I mean, all of these manufacturer programs are fantastic, and they are heavily discounted, if not free. So do them, and they're only available to you, so you can't give them to somebody else. Just you should go do
A
it.
lot of them can bring someone with you.
Yes, and it's I know at Spring Mountain, if you bring somebody with you, they can ride with the instructors.
ride with the
and they can have
instructor.
a great time too, and not have they're not even driving. So, but those so we talked about having that instruction from essentially what is a track school.
Yep.
You can go do a track school. You could do Skip Barber. You could do a bunch of other track schools. So there are places that you can go and you can learn if you just want to straight up learn. And then there are just the track days where you're going to take your car and you're going to bring it to a track. And a lot of those companies that organize these days will also give you the opportunity to have classroom instruction and in-car instruction. And believe me when I say this, don't be the guy that shows up at the track who's never been there before, who thinks, oh, I know how to drive fast. I drive fast on the expressway. You don't drive like this. And so take the instruction, be humble, know that you're in a new setting. This is definitely not driving down, the whatever your local freeway is, and this is not on-ramp driving. Really take it to heart and have them help you. Now, the best ones will have right seat instruction. Go out with the instructor first. Let the instructor drive your car, and you can see what your car can do. And then you switch seats. And then if the best you can do is a lead follow, okay, try to get right behind the instructor. If there's nobody there to help you, try to find somebody who knows the track. They're a good track driver, and just say, hey, could you either ride with me, or can I ride with you, or could I at least follow you and maybe learn the line a little bit. But
For sure.
Research who you're going with. There are a lot of great companies out there. I think our upcoming guest, Randy, will talk about some of them. But there are really great ways to safely get on track. And then why don't you talk about how before you get to the track, what should you do with your car? Because you don't want to, unless you're literally driving a track-built car, most of these you don't want to just take off the showroom floor and then head over to a racetrack with it without doing a little bit of prep work.
Yeah, high-end performance cars, Porsche GT line, even just their base cars, you could probably go to a track
Straight from
on
the-
an open track
yeah.
day. But
Yeah.
if you're
BMW M cars,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Other cars, number one thing I would say is make sure you have like .4 or some sort of racing fluid for brakes.
Okay, they should be a sponsor, but they're not. Castrol SRF is your gold standard for brake fluid. If you can change your brake fluid to Castrol SRF, and the last time I bought some, it was $80 a quart. It's not cheap, but man, is that stuff
are
bulletproof.
Bulletproof, absolutely.
You will never boil your brakes with that
Yeah.
fluid in there.
Yeah.
Have it done professionally if you don't know what you're doing.
Because
But
that's the hardest thing that you're going to do to your car
Yeah.
is the brakes.
Right.
So
and I'll tell some stories about that afterwards. But you don't stop just at the brake fluid. So
no, you want to then do at least the pads,
Right.
if not the pads and rotors as well, but at least the pads. You want something that has more of a bite, and also something that's not going to wear down or give you brake fade.
Right, and that's usually temperature related. So something that's really good with temperature. And,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of companies out there that make great brake pads, and they're fit for your car. Some of them are just swap in, swap out. So once you get the brake fluid changed, and you don't have to change it back, by the way. So I run Castrol SRF in my Corvette all the time.
Yeah,
All the time.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to change it back. You just change it out every couple of years or every few track sessions. But do some research. There's a lot of great information on forums.
And
There's
this
a
is
lot.
for any car you're
Any
driving.
car.
If you're going to bring your Honda Civic on the track, you're
Yes.
going to bring a Toyota Corolla on the track, your Nissan Sentra,
Your
it doesn't
Corvette, your
matter.
Mustang.
Anything that you're going to bring to the
Yep.
track, these are the things that are going to take a beating.
Yes.
Your brakes and your tires.
Brakes, tires, and then eventually, brake fluid you're going to want to change, and then differential fluid. There are some so good manufacturers that make good track cars will give you a list of things that you should do to prep the car for a track and then do afterwards. For example, you'll want to change your oil before you get on track. Sometimes, like in my C7, they always recommended maybe doing a heavier weight oil, like up to a 50 weight. Now they've revised that to a 040 that you can run that. But the heavier weight helps when the engine gets really hot. And then they offer a track alignment guide. You can get your car aligned so it handles better on the track. That's not, so some of this stuff can get a little expensive, like putting the car into alignment and then taking it out of alignment after the track day's over and changing your oil after the track day, because now you've really heated up that oil. You probably don't want to keep it in the car for the engine's benefit, so you want to change that. So there is a bit of a cost that's over and above what like an autocross would run you, which is why I recommend you start there. But when that bug bites, when you're at the autocross, you're like, this is awesome. I wonder what it would be like at 150 miles an hour. That's when you go to the racetrack. And so, there's and tires make a huge difference too. So, for example,
you don't want to be on winter tires.
No, you don't want. You at least want performance summer.
Unless
you are doing winter cross.
You're doing winter autocross or Road America or something like that.
Or something like that. I will say that the tires they put on let's say a Corvette, for example. So the Michelin Pilot, they used to call them Super Sports. Now they're like the 4S's are the standard ones, and then you have the Pilot Cup 2s. Great tires. I found doing a lot of track driving that once you exceeded the lateral grip of those tires, it went from perfect to code brown in about 0.1 seconds. There was no gradual breakaway. So they were great until you pushed it too far.
Until they weren't.
Right. And so what I ended up doing is I bought a second set of tires just for the track, like a smaller radius wheel, a little bit taller sidewall, and then I put Nitto NTO5s on them, or NTO1s, I'm sorry. NTO5s are the drag radials. NTO1s. The most beautiful thing about that tire, just the most progressive, beautiful breakaway. I could feel the car just a little bit of a slide, and I was like, okay, I'm at the edge of the traction. They were made for track driving. They were great grip, but so those are the little things you play with after you've done this for a few times. You're like, ooh, maybe I want to invest a little bit of research and time and money into tires or brakes or
Absolutely.
something like that.
Yeah, you can keep building, and then you want to get into suspension work, and then
cooling.
engine mods,
And then you just buy a race car.
and it just keeps going, and it's like an addiction. It just never
Yes,
stops.
this does end up in you buying a race car eventually.
Yeah, we do apologize. We claim no responsibility over the expenditures you will incur by going to the racetrack.
This is one of those addictions.
Entering your first autocross.
Right.
It's the gateway drug.
It really is. It really is.
But this is an addiction that you never want to stop feeding because it really. I love the saying that says, "Get your kids addicted to cars, and they won't have any money for drugs." Because it's a very expensive sport, but it is so much fun.
So
Harvey, you're gonna say?
I was just going to ask, what's the car everyone first and track you did your first track day in?
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my
Paul,
gosh!
you start.
Believe it or not, I was a Volvo S60 R Design, and it was pretty hilarious because even though I upgraded the tires, you could hear me coming from like a mile away, just to squeal.
What track?
It was we started. I started out at Road America. Was actually my first one.
Seriously?
Yeah,
Right, which
and
is a big track to start at.
Big track to start at. But it was at Blackhawk Farms where
Okay.
you could literally hear me. Didn't matter where you were standing on the track.
Yeah, that's a small enough track that if someone is doing that, you'll hear it no matter where you are on the property. That was, and I can attest because I was there when he was doing this. He was passing cars that were built much more for track driving in this Volvo. But your biggest problem was, I think at 130 the governor kicked in.
Yeah, I had a governor at 130, and
So
then,
like the front straight of Road America, everyone he passed every one of these people, and then he would hit the governor, and then all these people would pass him on the front straight.
That's great. What about you? What was yours?
So mine was a 2005 S4 convertible manual transmission, and then for those of you who don't know, that's a 4.2 V8 from Audi. And I bought this car in 2005. It was supposed to be a Corvette. And for reasons that I can't get into because my wife will kill me, she essentially
shall never be public.
She forced me to move into something that had 4 seats because we had a couple kids and it wasn't enough seats in the Corvette. So I compromised and I got the S4. And they wanted the convertible, right? Well, at the time I bought it, there were no restrictions on convertibles at racetracks. Well, like the day I bought it. New restrictions at racetracks that they didn't want. There was a rollover risk and yada, yada, yada. So I did find, though, several track days. Black Hawk Farms is a great one, and there was the event. It was a charity event up at Road America that was raising money for March of Dimes called Drive for Babies, and that was the first time I was at Road America. And we did Milwaukee Mile and a bunch of other little tracks, but that was the first one, and I had a lot of instruction. That car was the funny thing about that car, especially at Black Hawk Farms. I show up in the day, it's dry in the morning, and I'm getting passed by every Honda S2000, Corvette, every faster car. Well, then it starts drizzling about halfway through the day. And then it's me and an STI passing everybody. And every S2000's down in the grass because they spun out at the last turn. You know, it was great. So the all-wheel drive for, you know, stability, which is, by the way, if you're looking to pick a car to do track driving, and we're going to get to Jennifer and Randy's first cars, but if you're going to pick
Harvey.
a car, sorry,
And Harvey.
I'm thinking of our guest coming up, Harvey. There are great choices, and we should get into this. But you know, one of the safest ones would be something like an all-wheel drive, like a Subaru. Something with all-wheel drive would make that was a good first car for me because I didn't really have to worry about oversteer or.
Yep.
I mean, some understeer, but not really a lot of oversteer, and that's sort of like I think what scares people sometimes.
Yeah, in modern cars, you do also have all the stability control,
Yes,
traction
true.
control, all that. And honestly, if I'm doing a track day, I'm not turning that stuff off. I'm not being a hero. I'm driving. I'm letting the car help me be as good
nobody
as
else
I
is
can
paying
be.
for your car, Harvey.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
You know, if you're making the payments on that car, you want to bring it back, you know, in one piece. But what was your first car?
Actually,
track.
goes way back. It was at Waterford Hills Raceway outside of Detroit, northern suburbs, and it was 1982, and I was in a 1980 Ford Fiesta.
Wow.
4-speed.
Nice.
So front wheel drive, 4-speed, German made
Yep.
Ford car. And I had never done an autocross. I'd never been to a track day.
Wow.
A friend of mine said, "Hey, bring your Fiesta up. Let's go drive it."
Let's go have some fun.
And, you go through inspection. They're like, "Yep, we just need you to belt that battery down, tighten your
yes.
battery up or whatever, all that stuff." I had no idea. I didn't do anything. I didn't put different tires on it, no brake stuff. And I'm just out trying to drive and see what this was all about.
Wow.
And what a fun little car, though, because
yeah.
it was so light and, probably 90 horsepower, maybe
Yep.
85.
Proof that you do not need a supercar to do this.
No,
you do not.
and especially if you're learning, because you learn good habits in low horsepower cars.
100%.
100%, yeah.
The worst thing you could probably do is show up at your first track day in a Hellcat with 800 horsepower. Like, don't do that.
There are those videos too.
I know.
I talked to one of the instructors once. I said, "When do you know you're in trouble with someone who shows up at the track?" And he says, "When he shows up with driving gloves and driving shoes. I know I'm going to have a bad day."
My gosh.
Is it bad that I have both of those?
Okay, Jennifer, let's hear it.
Okay, so mine is different. We
Why
had
am I not surprised?
we had a family friend named Fred who ran a cup car, stock car, I should say, like at quarter-mile ovals. And my first track experience was driving that car at Rockford Speedway, a quarter-mile oval.
Sweet.
And through some fudging of some things, I actually got to do a race because my first time around the track was almost faster than pole.
Oh, wow.
And I was like impressed with myself. And it was because, and here's the way I am. Like you talk about autocross, right? My first time in the autocross would probably be my fastest. Because then the time is there. And now what do I do to beat that? What do I do to beat that? And I'm always thinking about that stuff. And so my head's not in the game. I've now removed myself.
Right. A lot of people, actually a lot of professionals will tell you, because you're like, "Oh, let me do it again." And they're like, "No, you're not going to get any faster."
You're not going to get any faster, And so I actually got to, for a year and a half, got to race in that series.
Wow.
And I didn't learn anything but car control. Because this is quarter-mile ovals. These are the people who are building these cars at home.
Yeah.
These stock cars at home. and the person starting last is right in front of the person starting first because there's just not that
quarter
much
mile.
track. So there's not a lot of passing, but there's a whole lot of touching. There's a whole lot of bumping. There's a whole lot of rubbing. There's a whole lot of contact. And you need to understand how your car's going to react. And it was a really, really cool experience for me. And that was my first track stuff. And I actually started racing after that.
That's great.
I didn't like turn wheels on road courses for a long, long time. You know, I'm trying to remember the first car I took to Road America, which is our home track up here in Wisconsin. 4.1-ish mile road course, and it's a power course. You know, there's a long straight. There's the carousel. There's you need power.
Yeah.
At Road America.
Road America rewards a lot of different aspects of cars,
It
but
does.
power is probably one of the
We
most.
actually filmed with the Viper ACR for Auto Exotica TV season 1, and we had a guy named the Wolf, who's the one who went out with the ACR and broke all the track records, like 10 out of 12 track records with the ACR, and got to sit with him in the passenger seat critiquing, you know, my driving. And that was a very memorable, I don't think it was the first time I was at Road America. It had to be years before that. But that car on that track with that guy was like an indelible, unforgettable experience. That was pretty cool. So, and it's a guy like that, excuse me, who helps the manufacturer, you know, because the Viper was sort of a hairy car. I was fortunate enough to own a couple of them. It's the first car I ever spun unwillingly. And I did it twice in the same car, and I was like, shoot. I actually own an RT10 Roadster that a friend of mine was supposed to pick up and bring to a photo shoot, and he totaled it.
Oh, God.
And I still have the steering wheel and a key and a center hubcap from that car.
That's all that's left.
But somebody like the Wolf, who goes out, you know, with the engineers, and he was an engineer, but he's also an incredibly good driver, and helped them tweak that. And if you ever had a chance to drive a Viper ACR, do it, because that car, even on the road, it's great. It fixed everything that was wrong with the Viper. So,
And then, of course, what did Dodge do? Killed it.
exactly. Bring back the Viper, not as an EV. So people like that are just incredible, which is a great setup for our guest today, who has done that for manufacturers. He's done that for Motor Trend. He's done that for Haggerty. He's done that for a number of people and publications. And we are very, very honored to have a very special guest today, as Brendan has dropped his name a couple times, Mr. Randy Pobst.
The living legend.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, Jennifer, on We Are Motor Driven Talk Cars. I've been a car guy my whole life, a professional road racer my whole life. That doesn't mean that I drove in professional races. It means people paid me to race their cars.
There's
I'm
a
very
big
proud of that.
difference.
Yeah, I won almost 100 pro races so far.
Wow.
Including one last summer, if you call WRL Pro. But
Why not?
And then I'm most proud of the factory contracts that I had. I drove for Porsche and for Audi and for Mazda and for Volvo.
That's our
Factory
favorite.
contracts, factory supported teams. And I was lucky enough to be on some good teams, one at the Rolex 24 at Daytona twice.
Nice.
I got this. Oh, wait, we're not on camera.
That is a good looking watch.
Very
Bill.
nice Rolex there.
He's showing a Rolex watch that he got for winning that Daytona Rolex
Yeah,
24
see
hours.
how small they look compared to today.
Right.
Watch fashion has grown. And then I'm also pretty proud of getting 4 championships in the World Challenge GT category with some of those factories I was driving for. So it's been a wonderful ride.
And the ride continues because you seem to have a knack, shall we say, for feeling out a car really by the seat of your pants for, like, you know, that left front suspension or that right front tire or this left, I don't know. This is like your butt-ometer has to be like honed in like nobody's butt I know. Like, is that something you developed, do you think, on the track? Is that something you developed just because you've been in so many different cars? Or like, how does that work?
Going to say it's a combination of something that was inborn where I kind of have a natural feel
Sure.
for handling.
Okay.
I won the very first autocross I ever ran.
Wow.
beating last year's class champion. And when I just walked up and drove the car I had. And so I was pretty good at it from the beginning. But I've learned so much over the years. And I think putting those two together, I do consider myself good at getting in a car I've never seen before and going pretty fast in it right away without crashing.
Okay, that's a good part.
That led me to a long and fruitful career in music video. Not music video, car videos.
I was going to say,
Do you know what that was? Maybe listeners didn't hear this, but Randy, we're doing this interview today, or this conversation today. He's at Circuit of the Americas, and he gets to work on a fun little project today that he was telling us about earlier. But in the background there, we just heard some sonorous car go by, and I'm sure that was music to your ears, Randy. It was definitely music to mine.
Yep.
And I'm sorry if our listeners didn't hear that, but I guarantee that's where music video came from.
I apologize for that. This is the quietest place I could find it at Wi-Fi.
No, it's good. It's good. We love it.
Yeah. Anytime we can hear high RPM engine noises, we're happy.
Yeah, it's safe
A lot
to
of
say,
Porsches.
Randy, you are the consummate not only racer, but a really somebody who has told a whole generation of people about cars on especially racetracks and how they handle and how they work. And this whole episode is about getting more of those people to the racetrack. The people who have sat back and watched you in a lot of your videos get out on, especially, some of these great tracks in California, watch you set lap time records in a lot of those. That's another thing you didn't brag on. I'll brag on for you. A lot of the various lap time records you set in many, many cars. But kind of explain maybe, why would somebody want to, say, take their new sports car and maybe take it to a racetrack? And then also, what's the best way to get into that and start that process going?
Well, today's cars are so fast. They're so good. Even your average Camry rent-a-car has more horsepower than the best Porsche did when I was a kid in 1978. And so why have a fast car that you can't drive fast?
Right.
That's the slogan of a racetrack near me, Atlanta Motorsport Park. So the racetrack is the right place to do that. And if you're somebody who loves driving your car, you zoom around the corners, you like to floor it up the freeway on-ramp. Well, imagine going somewhere where it's legal to drive as fast as you can. And for me, that started in autocross. Autocross is kind of like slalom skiing with your car.
That's a
You
good
set
analogy.
up a course in a big parking lot or an airport runway, and you zoom through these cones, swerving back and forth, a lot like a slalom ski course. It's really fun, and it's a great place to start your driving career because you can feel what the car feels like when you're really pushing it in a corner without the risk. If you spin out or lose control, there's nothing to hit but there's little plastic traffic cones. So autocross is good for that. And I started when I was 19 years old. I just stumbled upon this. I saw an ad in a shopping news, if you're old enough to remember that. And it said, race your own car, $5.
Ooh.
And I thought, if I save up for 2 weeks, I might be able to get together $5. That was a lot of money in 1979. let me tell you.
Yeah.
And from the moment I went on the track, on the clock, this made a big difference for me. Now, you don't have to, you can go out and have fun. Autocross is on the clock. It transformed the driving experience, and I was hooked. I became addicted from that very first run. And I've tried to do every track I can ever since. But starting in autocross when I was 19 or 20, I didn't know anything. I just drove like a maniac, If I'd been on a road course, I would have wrecked a lot of cars.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And so autocross is a good way to start. Another good way to start is doing a track day with an instructor. There are a lot of great companies. I'm with an event being put on by one of the best here in COTA in Austin, Texas. It's where they run Formula One. And it's called Chin Track Days. Old friends of mine, they call themselves the gold standard, and they are. But what's cool about it is you're a person who wants to drive your new Porsche on the racetrack. You get an instructor, somebody experienced and knowledgeable, who has been vetted, been approved by the organization. In the case of Chin, Porsche Club is this way, BMW Club is this way. And so you get advice and they help you stay safe.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Randy. And maybe what we can do is put on the WAMD website a list of all those track day instruction programs. I think we can put that together for people. That'd be a good idea.
Absolutely.
So one quick question for you. What was the car you drove in your first autocross? What make?
At the time, I had a really cool car, but I didn't know it. I just bought this car. It was by far the nicest car I'd ever had because I saw it in the Auto Trader. Remember when the Auto Trader was paper?
Oh, that's
magazine?
the best.
Yeah.
And
The
you
Bible.
get it on Thursday, so you get it early. And this car, I thought it just looked kind of cool. And it was, to me, it was expensive, took all the money I had in the world. But I could see a sway bar hanging out underneath it, and it was lowered.
Had to be fast then, right?
Yeah, like 1978 when I bought this car, and nobody was lowering cars in my high school. They had Chevelles and Camaros, and they were jacking them up
Yep.
and putting the big 15-inch 60 series tires on the back.
Right.
Well, I wasn't into that drag racy, straight ahead power thing. I liked corners.
Yes.
Even before I could drive, I liked corners. I had a mini bike. Thank you, Dad. And so this car it looked cool. You know what it was? It was a Datsun 510 two-door.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a cool car. They looked sort of like a little BMW, and they were half the price.
Yes.
Somebody had done some suspension work and those American Libra wheels on it with 4 spokes. And I loved it. I liked the way it looked. And I went and looked at it, and I liked the way it drove. And that was what I happened to have when I went to that autocross.
Wow.
Guess what?
That's
It was a good autocross car.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I had a friend who had one of those in the late 70s as well and drove it a few times. Plus, when I grew up as a kid, I used to go to the Trans Am races. So I saw the Pete Brock cars race. And those cars always hold a special place in my heart.
I painted those stripes on my car.
Nice.
Nice.
Spray can and masking tape.
Oh, that's cool.
So Randy, let me ask you a quick question. Obviously, you've been on a track probably 1 million miles or so of driving. Where do you find time, or maybe that is, how do you get faster? Like you go around the track. Obviously, the first time is like more just kind of studying the track. When you start getting really into a hot lap, where do you find, or how do you find a way to go faster?
Interestingly, I'm an optimistic person. I'm upbeat. I try to look at the bright side. But when I'm on track, especially if I'm racing, I'm negative. To go faster, you got to look at the negative. Where am I losing time? What am I doing wrong?
Right.
Where can I be better? And people who are good at this are always looking for that. Always looking for that, that gold ring, the stretching for that little bit more. Now, in general, we can say that the single most important part of turning a good lap time is coming out of a corner fast. We call it exit speed. And it helps if you look down at your tachometer, your speedometer, when you come out of a corner and there's a consistent place to look down and see what your speed was. This gives you a very good instant reference in case you don't have any of the modern data systems bolted into your car. And the faster you come out of a corner, the faster you are all the way down the next straightaway. It really pays off. And it's relatively easy because you can look ahead and you can see if it looks like if you're going to stay on the track if you start accelerating hard. That's relatively safe because anytime you go on track, you've always got to keep in mind that you want to keep this car in one piece.
Yes.
You want to drive it home or drive it on the trailer.
Shiny side up.
Yep, that's the goal.
So work on coming out of a corner fast first, and then start working on going into a corner fast because that's much more difficult and it's much more risky. And that's where I like to say that's where the gods live. A real talent
Nice.
in finesse and skill is entering a corner fast and coming out fast.
Right.
But start by coming out fast. Have a good exit speed.
That's great. Yeah, because when I ride with pro drivers on drive events, that's the thing I notice is they brake much harder and much later than I would in that car. Partly because I'm there to evaluate the car. I'm not there to set a lap time, right? So I'm not going to go 10 tenths. But when you do drive with someone who is driving 9 and 10 tenths, that's the thing you notice most is how late they brake.
Yeah, I've noticed that whenever I'm driving with someone like you, Randy, there's a certain amount of butterflies that enter your stomach when you get into, let's say, a turn 5 at Road America, and you're at about 80 feet to the turn, and they still haven't hit the brakes yet, and it's always many more butterflies when it's your car they're driving, and you would have broke about 150 feet further back on the track, but. That I think is a really good point. Is that entry? The corners obviously are where you make your speed, right? It's where the good drivers make their speed because the bad ones are the ones that have 1,000 horsepower and they catch you in the straights, but then you leave them for dust in all of the turns, and you could be driving something as slow as a Miata and you're still going to turn a better lap time than people who don't know how to enter and exit turns. But that's exactly where you said, the instructions comes in. I know you're a fantastic instructor and you've done a lot of instructing, but help people understand, when before you even get to a track, you've got to prep your car a little bit, but when you get there, what's the expectation that somebody who's new at this, might go in with? And is there anything you can tell somebody who's done this for a while? So we may have some listeners that are like, oh, I've done track days for 10 years. What could they benefit from over, a novice? Maybe they've developed maybe some bad habits. Maybe they are getting too confident, or they're still not happy with their lap times. What could you tell those people?
I got 2 good answers for you. One, if you're new to tracking, and like Harvey was just talking about, running on a racetrack and pushing it a little bit is really hard on the brakes. So if you're planning on going to drive a racetrack in your car, it's a good idea to put in track brake pads and change the brake fluid. And this, if you're aggressive, you're going to need it. So that's the first thing that I would look at if I was new and I was going to take a car to the track. And for somebody who's experienced, who's done a lot of driving and they've kind of reached that plateau. I hear this a lot. And if they've been on track a lot, they're smart enough to know they don't want to wreck this car. So they've reached a place where they feel safe, but they're not going as fast as some of their buddies in the same kind of car are, and they don't know where to find it. Now, this is a big general question, but one thing to think about is when are you getting on the gas? We want to get on the gas early to get a good run off the track or down the next straightaway. I just talked about exit speed, right? Well, guess what? After you get some experience, I find most people who have done some track work but aren't pros are getting on the gas too soon. Ooh. And one way you know that is if you ever go to the gas and have to come off. If you go to the throttle and have to come off, you went on too soon. And so next lap, wait a little bit longer. there's a time in the middle of a corner where you need patience. You have to wait until the car is pointed in a direction where it can now begin to accelerate. And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people brake straight, come off the brake, turn, and go to the gas. And that's too soon. So if you're somebody who is plateaued, think about that. When are you getting on the throttle? Are you able to unwind your hands and drive wider? Or do you have to go on, off, or hold a long time before you can accelerate? That means that you're going to the throttle too soon, and that can hurt your exit speed, because when you go to throttle, it transfers weight off your steering tires.
Right.
And that's a whole nother discussion.
Oh, yeah, understanding weight transfer.
Your primary job as a driver is weight management.
Yeah.
So think about leaving the weight on the front tires to help you turn until you see that everything's good, and then you can begin to accelerate.
And I assume that you recommend rolling onto that throttle. You're not stabbing at the brake or the throttle. You want to roll your foot into the gas when you decide you're going in there.
Because, Brandon, when you're in the middle of a corner, what are the tires doing?
Yeah, they're lateral. They're holding you on the track right now.
They're cornering.
Yeah.
What if you suddenly ask them to accelerate hard at the same time?
Yep. Too many forces in too many directions. It's no bueno.
Then they're sliding.
Yeah.
Then you're on YouTube.
And not in a good way.
Tires can only do a lot of one thing at a time. So when you're cornering and you want to start accelerating out of the corner, you're still cornering. So you got to give up a little bit of cornering and add a little bit of power. And that's another thing that separates the best drivers from the almost good drivers, is that the best drivers get on the throttle very, very gently at first, like a butterfly landing on a leaf.
Ooh, I like that.
Because that's all the tires can handle. And then you roll that in as you open up the steering, and it's a beautiful harmony. And that actually is the closest thing I can call a secret to my driving. Is with the braking, it's the other way around. I brake hard and straight, like real hard, like Harvey said. And then I brake lighter as I start turning. And this is a very delicate maneuver. You're slowly coming off the brake, slowly adding steering if the corner wants that. Blending. You've got to blend these things because the tires can only do a lot of one thing, right? If braking really hard, you got to give up a little braking when you want to start turning.
And this is the beautiful symphony of track driving that I don't think drag racers will ever understand, is it's all of that together in one spot on the racetrack, just one corner. All of that is going into it. And to do it and do it well, and you come out of there and you do have speed and you've just hit that apex and you've actually done it the right way, the feeling you feel is, I don't know.
It's euphoria.
It is euphoric. It is better than anything else. That,
when you get it right.
Oh yeah, and when you get it wrong, it's the exact opposite. But when you get it, it's like hitting the perfect drive if you're a golfer. You know, like you just absolutely did everything right, and the result was absolutely perfect. And you're like, oh, that felt so great. And then you're proud of your car because your car just did something that you didn't think really could do. It's all of that goes into why we all here and you just love driving on track so much. That's what it is. It's exactly what you just described.
Well, and you're just talking right now. You're just talking feet. That's just brake and throttle. Don't forget you got hands doing something at the wheel too,
and your eyes and everything.
There is a symphony. Randy just said blending, and boy, that's yeah. I want a T-shirt, Randy. We're going to make a T-shirt for you, and it's going to be a butterfly landing on a leaf, and it's going to say, "How I corner." All right. So we're going to make that T-shirt with our logo on it, and you'll wear it all the time. It'll be great.
What changes in the way you talk to people when there's a third pedal involved in this process?
Well, that complicates the issue a lot. A manual transmission is much more difficult to drive on track than the modern automatics. And I love it. It's more involved. Yeah. When good automatics started coming out, even sequential shifters and even worse, paddle shifters, and Porsche PDK, where it does everything right. For me, to drive a car like that, it even goes faster than a manual now, but it eliminates an entire category of driving or driving involvement. I felt like I was in a video game in the early days.
Yep.
Like all I'm doing is steering and pedals.
Yep.
What happened to all the clutch and the shifting? And the first thing, or the main thing though, for driving a manual transmission on track is to learn how to downshift properly. And that can be very difficult. The old heel and toe downshift or matching revs. When you're slowing down and you want to go to a lower gear, the engine wants to be faster. And to drive correctly, while you're downshifting, you've got to rev the engine up so it's ready for when you let the clutch up. And that's tricky, tricky, tricky. I used to work for Skip Barber Racing School back in the late 80s. And that was always tough for our students in the formula cars because they really kind of needed to be able to do that. And it's hard to learn. It's like a new dance step. Very awkward at first until you get it down. And then it becomes very natural and subconscious.
Yeah, it's funny. You do find that it becomes second nature over time, but I can imagine in a formula car, as light as that is, if you miss that rev point and lift off with the engine too low, that's just going to break the rear end loose and all hell is going to break loose. So,
you got it.
Yeah.
It can ruin your life. In fact, a bad downshift is the fastest way to spin a car.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
And let's not overlook that everybody who's ever watched a race and has, more importantly, listened to a race and has just absolutely loved the boom, boom, boom going into a corner. That's the rev match downshifting. It's part of the symphony we just talked about. That's the music of it. And without, the automatics, they try to replicate that, but there is nothing like you doing it yourself, number one. But even just listening to it, if somebody else do it well is just the best. It's such a euphoric feeling again. When you hit those downshifts, you absolutely nail everything, and you add that third pedal and the stick in. It's
magic.
There's just no. You can be faster around a racetrack, yes, with the automatic. But it is nowhere near as much fun. Yeah. And I think you'd agree, Randy.
You know what's a great feeling is to get in with a student who I don't know, and we go out of the pits, come down into the first corner, and they go, whoom, whoom. I'm like, oh, rev matching downshift. Beautiful.
You know it's going to be a good day when you hear that.
Okay. Yeah, some people know how to do that who have never tracked.
Sure.
It's getting very rare.
Very rare.
It's such a wonderful feeling. And a big part of the manual transmission driving experience. It's just so much more fun to pick the gears yourself. And in traffic, it's the same way. I like choosing when to do that shift. Like I know that I'm going to have to go even on the throttle for a little bit here until I get up that next hill around the corner. And then I'm going to want to accelerate. And I want the engine to be ready to go right now. So I leave it in third. Whereas the automatics, they don't know what's coming up.
Not at all.
So they shift up and they're trying to get good gas mileage. And I've tried the manual shifters on a modern car, automatic, and it's just not the same.
No.
It is just not the same. And plus they have 7, 8, 10
Right.
years.
Just too many.
Right. So if you shift up to get good mileage, which I like to be efficient on the street. Then if I want to be in a low gear to accelerate, I got to shift down like 6 times. Imagine. Yeah. I'm going to go there. I'm going to talk about an electric car. Electric cars have tremendous torque and no gears, or 2 maybe, but electric cars are always ready right now.
Yes.
Have you driven the Ioniq 5N on the track?
I have.
Yeah.
In fact, guess what, Harvey? I drove one at the Pikes Peak Hill Climb.
Oh, great. Yeah, I drove it at Road America last year, and I was kind of blown away by that experience.
Yeah, one of our fastest last times was in the Ioniq 5N.
You really have to adjust how you drive on a track because everything's always available immediately. I actually went to the Ioniq 5N launch at Laguna Seca. And I almost launched the Ioniq 5N at Laguna Seca on that front straight because I stayed a little too far left. But I've never been to that track. That was my first time on the track. So that was a little unnerving for me. You know, we were trying to count earlier this morning how many tracks we've all driven, and it's a lot for each of us, you know, whether it's press launches or our own track events, whatever. And we were in for people who don't know, when you do these press launches, it's typically lead follow on the track. So we have somebody like a Randy Pobst in front of us, and then there's 3, 4, maybe 5 cars behind him. And you're supposed to, like every lap, maybe adjust. They didn't do that on this event. So we had a pro driver, I don't recall his name right now, but he said, we'll do one warm-up lap, because everybody in my group had never been Laguna Seca, but we were in the experienced driver group, right? So we're meant to go a little faster than this other group that has never been on track sort of thing, but none of us had driven that track specifically. So our instructor goes out and is supposed to do one warm-up lap, like a recon lap, and then we'll pick up speed. If you stay with him, he'll keep going faster. There was no warm-up lap. This was immediately out, full green, full force, and I was the last car in the group with 3 people in front of me who have never been on this track, especially an electric car. So he just takes off, and the first person behind him, Ezra Dyer, I'm sure he wouldn't mind the call out, and he's a great driver on track, great driver, love Ezra, and he was doing a pretty commendable job keeping up with our pro for having never been on this track. And then the guy behind him was probably 10 car lengths back, and the guy behind him was another 5 or 8 car lengths back, and I'm like, I don't want to hit you. So like, I'm just gonna stay back. And we had 3 different sessions like that. And the guy in front of me is like, if you want to move up, you can. And I'm like, it's okay. And the pro came back and he's like, how was that? I go, fast. And I said, remember, like, he's way behind you. He's even further back and I'm way back here. And he goes, well, do you want to move up front? He goes, I'll give you 2 options. You can either move behind me or do your own thing. That's what he said. And I was like, you know what? I'll do my own thing.
Was this guy young?
Yes, he was.
I'm not surprised. He probably
Yeah.
was one of Hyundai's factory drivers. They've got TCR
Yep.
races.
It was not the TCR people, because I went to the Nürburgring with them and actually know all those drivers, and they are all amazing. I mean, all these pro drivers are great at these events, no question. But he was definitely out there to show you what the car could do. But when you're trying to apply everything Randy's been talking about, the right foot, the left foot, you know, because sometimes your left foot braking if you've only got 2 pedals, and then you're steering, and you can manually shift an Ioniq 5N with paddles, which
She's doing air quotes right now.
wanted you to do, you know, and you're like, but what mode am I in, you know? And there's all these different settings, and which is why I volunteered to just do my own thing. They never lapped me. They never caught up to me, you know, but I kept enough space between me and them in front of me where I could record myself on track. Like Harvey earlier mentioned, you know, analyzing the car for what it could do. But good Lord, you get an electric car, like Randy brought up, on track, and all of that power is always available immediately on your right foot. And so there's not like a smooth roll in. Like, it's just like you do a little bit of tap and your hair's on fire, you know, you're flying.
I was gonna
It's a whole
ask.
different adjustment. So
I was gonna ask Randy, if when you do drive an electric car on track, do you change your mode of driving? Do you drive it a different way?
You know what? I don't. I like the instant torque delivery, and I still hear wind noise, rocks coming off the tires. There are noises for sure. Although it's funny, the Ioniq N has a noise. You can turn it on and it sounds exactly like a car, a gas car. But for me, no, it's not different. And I've driven them a lot at Pikes Peak. I've done these Tesla Corsa track days with unplugged performance in Teslas. And I actually worked on the Tesla track mode the first time they created it. I got to help consult on that 10 years ago. It was a while ago. And so, no, I don't do it differently. It's the same thing. I'm still applying torque, still, you know, rolling the power in as I open up the wheel, all that. It's the same.
You know, guys, we got to have Randy back just to talk about how he has directly affected everybody's experience in a car that is a track-worthy car, because I think you've consulted on quite a few cars and those tweaks and what those are and how they work their way into a production car and why they tweak certain things. So that'll be an extremely exciting discussion, but I think we'll probably have to save that for the next time.
Save that for the next time. Yeah, like setting up the OEMs, like helping them
Yes.
figuring out how to sort their cars, because that's a whole art in and of itself, which kind of brings us full circle, Randy, back to what we started off at the beginning, that sort of feel that you have on the track. A lot of the things you discussed today, I think anybody that's listening that wants to do track days can take all of that advice to heart. You know, the track pads, the changing the fluid for the brakes, you know, really thinking about the tires even that you're going to put on track. They might be different than the street tires you have, and all those sorts of things that we've talked about and you've introduced as well. All of those can be taught, you know, that fast out of the corner, that braking later, all those things are skills that can be taught. You still seem to have this inherent ability, and I'm wondering to analyze what the car is doing. I harken back to Days of Thunder. If our listeners have seen that Tom Cruise movie, you know, he knew how to drive a car fast. He could drive the tires right off the car. What they talked about in the movie, but he didn't know how to explain what was going on. You know, so they formed their own language. Him and his crew chief and the car builder. Is that something, Randy, that you think can be taught? That sort of feel of what's going on. Just that inherent ability to analyze what's going on with the suspension, with the tires, with all of that. And sure, you'll gain some experience the more you're on a track. But is that something you either have or don't have, or is that something you think can be taught?
People are born with a certain level of sensitivity. And I think there's something you're born with. And some drivers have a lot. I know some really good drivers, like you just said, that cannot explain what they're doing or even what the car's doing, but they turn good laps. For them, it's more like an art. They drive seat of the pants feel, and they're good at it. And for one example of that, I would say the Unsers, a famous family of drivers, especially the Bobby Unser side, pure feel. But then you have the thinkers. These are old drivers, but Alain Prost was a thinker. And Al Holbert, gosh, I should come into this century somewhere in here. But yes, it can be taught. And one good way to help teach that is to have a nice track day where you can go out all you want, like an open track day, which is a wonderful thing, and come in and adjust the car. Change an anti-sway bar and send the driver back out and say, can you feel something changing here? And that develops a sensitivity.
Awesome. Randy, thank you so much for your time today. It's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. We really appreciate you, and all the guys do as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you.
Always great.
Good to be back with you, gang.
All right. Well, you have fun out there at COTA. We're a little jealous that you're there, and we're in Wisconsin in a conference room recording a podcast, but you enjoy that, and we will talk to you soon, okay?
Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Oh, just another thank you to Randy Pobst. Boy, I hope you guys listening really, really enjoyed that. He is first off, he's such a cool, nice guy.
Yeah,
and he's just so
nice.
fun to talk to. But he is a wealth of knowledge, experience, and talent, and so many things all rolled up into one fiery bundle of person. Gotta love Randy Pobst. Thank you, Randy, for being a part of this today.
He is everything that embodies like what we love about this sport, just wrapped into one guy.
He's just another one of us.
Yeah. And so if you see him out and about,
Except
say
he's
hi.
a much better driver.
Yeah.
Thank you, Harvey, for that qualifier.
Yes.
He's one of us on another level.
Yeah. Randy can drive the wheels off of anything.
Yes, he can.
Including two-wheeled vehicles.
Yes, he can.
You know, this kind of led me to think, like, we talked earlier about our own track, the first track cars. What was the most memorable moment for you guys on a track, if you had to pick one or two real memorable moments?
I think for me it was I had my Focus RS, and we were at the Blackhawk again, and I took my father with me, and because he's always wanted to kind of come with me, but just it never worked out, and finally got him to come with me, and so he got in the car, and we're going around the track. Now when he was younger, he used to do drag racing in a Dodge Challenger, and when we're going around the track, we were done with the lap. First thing he said to me, "Your mother would have died if she wasn't here." Number one. And number two, like he just says, I am just so blown away on how this is such a different experience than drag racing. Like he was just in shock on how fast you can go. Because when you're on the expressway and you think you're driving fast, like you said before, you ain't driving fast.
No.
I mean, even if you're doing, if you're going to break the speed limit, break the law, and go super fast in a straightaway, that's one thing. But just taking the turns and everything, and the braking and the lateral acceleration, everything,
Blending all of that together.
it's just a completely different experience. And that was a moment that like my father was like so proud of me, and it was just one of those golden moments for me.
Awesome.
I'll add to that when you do this, when you do a lot of track driving, it makes you a much, much better street driver. I mean, you see things before they happen. You can control your car. So that's the impressive thing, is that, and I think that's what your dad saw, because my dad said something similar to me once. And that's another benefit of this. It's not just fun, but you will find yourself driving a lot better just safer and more competent and confident.
The skills you learn.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Harvey, what was your most memorable moment?
Well, I've got two. One was driving and one was riding. The driving was a BMW M3 launch at Road America about 10 years ago. They did I was on the first wave, and it was dry for our track day, and we had open track, no lead follow, no right seat driver. Get in the M3 and go 5 laps.
Nice.
What the?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the kink was open.
Oh,
So
nice.
it was just a blast. And we did 5 laps at a time, and you could do as many as you want. I ended up probably doing 40 laps that day.
Wow.
But the last I hopped in the right seat with the chief engineer from BMW at the time, he ran Hyundai for a while. Albert Bierman.
Bierman.
Yeah,
Oh,
and so
great
he
guy.
drove me in the car and talked all about it, which was great. But my real right seat driving experience was at a BMW Classic event where they brought out the 3.0 CSL that won IMSA in 1975, won Sebring, and I got to ride right seat with Bobby Rahal behind the wheel. And that was just chef's kiss.
I'm bowing.
Yes.
That's wow.
Yeah.
Jennifer,
pretty
can you
pro.
top that?
No, I can't top that. I mean, I already mentioned the Viper ACR with the Wolf at Road America. That was a very memorable experience. I'll talk about a very proud moment. I raced for 2.5 years in my younger years. This is many, many, many years ago. I never won a race. I was never last either. So not necessarily mid-pack, sometimes upper mid-pack, but I learned a lot of car control in the 2 different race series I ran in. And then I was off track for a long, long time. But I was at a Hyundai event in Atlanta, and they had an autocross course set up. And it was Elantra N, Veloster N, and Kona N. And they had 2 pro drivers there that day. And they had the big leaderboard with the pro drivers' times in the autocross. And I went out in a Veloster N with the paddles. And in 1 lap, I beat the pro driver by 2 seconds. And watching, I had no idea what my time was because I couldn't see the timer thing. But literally everybody at the tent with the leaderboard, their faces just their jaws dropped, eyes bugged out of their heads. I'll give a shout out to Michelle Tinson, who's the Hyundai PR rep for our area. She was there, and she literally was jumping up and down with her hands in the air because, she works with me regularly. And
That's
she was
awesome.
like, that's my girl, And I got out of the car, and they're like, you can probably shave another second. And we talked about this earlier this episode. I'm like, no, I couldn't. And I literally walked away, and it was almost like one of those, mic drop moments where the building blew up behind me and the flames are going.
You're just the Joker walking out of the hospital.
Dinner that night was like, that's the girl that, then everybody pointing to me, journalists I didn't know, and that was probably one of my proudest track moments ever.
Awesome.
It was just such a neat thing.
That is so cool. Such a cool story.
Yeah.
And shout out to Michelle. She's great over at Hyundai. But mine, I'll do 2 too. It's one is one of my first experiences at Road America. I think before I even brought my own car there, I had a neighbor who bought a first year Dodge Charger SRT. And back then, Dodge did a SRT day if you bought the car, and you could bring a friend for like, I think I only paid like $395 to do this. And we go up to Road America. So I ride up with my friend. His was free. But I got the same experience. And we drove Viper on the autocross course that they have set up there. They actually didn't have the course that's currently there. They had the parking lot set up.
Parking lot course.
And then they had us in the Magnum SRT on the big track and the Crossfire SRT, if you remember that little guy.
Yep.
And the kink was open. I had never driven the course before, and it was lead follow. And I had a Dodge Magnum SRT around the course, and those brakes were, we talk about brake warp sometimes, and it's like basically your brakes have been so overheated. There's pad, the rotors really aren't warped, but there's pad material that's just smeared and stuck on there, and so it's not an even thing. And that's what I was dealing with going around this track at very high speeds, because that car was very capable. But it was great. And then in the kink, I put 2 tires off on the left. I'm like first time around this track, and I had heard don't lift in the kink. They don't even let us journalists drive the kink.
No, they don't.
When we go out for the Midwest
we have
Automotive
to do
Media
the
Association.
motorcycle chicane, which is like this little bypass around it.
And the kink is all it is it's, I don't know, what is that? Degree-wise, it's like a 20-degree right-hander.
It's not huge.
It's just high speed.
Because you have a lot of buildup before it.
Right.
Yeah, so you come out of the carousel, you drive really fast, and you can slow down, but some people don't.
Like Randy said, come out fast.
Yeah, and then you go into that kink, and there's no room for error. The problem with the kink is that you're probably entering. When I was driving with my Corvette one time when it was open, it was 100. I got out of there at 110. So there and there's a wall right like 5 feet off the racetrack. So it's like so putting 2 tires off in that it was a bit of excitement for me. But I got it. I saved it. I nobody knew because I was the last person in the lead follow. So it was great. I don't think anyone saw. And one time also at Road America, we were doing a charity event with one of these.
Drive for Babies?
Yeah,
Again?
it was Drive for Babies, but it was the sequel. And I
think they just call it Drive.
Now it's called the
Yeah.
Drive, right?
Yeah.
It was after the March of Dimes.
Drive for Toddlers?
It was no longer, they were doing it for the Children's Hospital, not for March of Dimes. So they don't call it the Babies one anymore.
I
It was
get
for
it.
Children's Hospital, but which you can go to, by the way. Every year they do it, and Randy was there last year giving hot laps. But I was actually driving hot laps with a bunch of other people, including Larry Loshak, who raced very well in Trans Am.
Trans Am, yeah.
And Larry he wasn't driving his own car. Someone gave him in this souped up Audi
RS3, I think it was.
3 or 4 that had a lot of chip stuff done to it. Yeah. Well, what that meant basically is that I was passing him because it would go into limp mode halfway through his laps. And so I'm passing him in my Corvette. And I got to get out and say, well, I passed Larry Loshak around the track. But that's not the fun part. He was getting mad at that. And then I saw that he was getting upset because his car wasn't working. I said, Larry, you want to drive my car? He goes, yes. And so he'd never driven a Corvette C7 before.
Oh,
so
wow.
we get in. I get in the right seat. He turns off all the nannies and puts it in race mode, which I never do because I'm paying for this car, right? I'm still making payments at that time. And he just takes off like we had just robbed a bank. And he's going around this course faster than I've ever been. I thought I was driving. This is the thing. When you get into the right seat and a professional is driving your car, you're like, I had no idea my car could do this because he is driving the wheels off this thing. And it's funny. The whole time I had this huge smile on my face, and in the back of my mind, and the whole time I'm going, "Please don't crash my car! Please don't crash my car! Please!" And he's just absolutely hooning it. He's having a great time. He's just sliding through 5. He was like sideways the whole way. He's like having fun shifting. He's just having the time of his life. He was like, "This is so much fun. This car is so awesome." And I'm just going, "Yes, it is. Please don't crash my car! Please don't crash my car!" It was just so much fun. It was that. In a nutshell, is sort of why we all, I think, really just love this I call it a sport, but you don't even we're not out there winning anything. When you go to a track day, they always say, the only people who win a track day, the ones who drive their car home.
Yep.
So there's nobody timing you. Nobody's giving you a contract for a racing, team. It's just go out, have fun with your car. You don't have to be at the edge. You don't have to drive 10-10s. Although at Sons of Speed, we always say that your 7-10s or your 10-10s is our 7-10s. That's our motto at the track, because we just love this stuff. But I think that kind of is a wrap for this particular
Yeah, if you're still
episode.
listening, thank you.
Yeah, for
because
hanging in, because this
one's
went
been
a
little bit
lot longer than we
Yeah.
thought. But
A lot of
happens
good
when
content.
when you talk about
Well, we're
what you're
talking about our
passionate.
favorite subject here. So.
And
know.
as you can probably tell, this is like manual transmissions, near and dear to Brendan's heart. So
Yes, this is what gets my juices flowing, as I know it does for you guys too. But I mean, the question for you guys out there in listening to this is, if you could drive one track, just one track, what would it be? Mine would be the Nürburgring. I know.
it's mine
Jennifer's too.
Nürburgring.
What about you guys, real quick?
Monaco, just because of the
yeah.
nostalgia
That's a good
to
one.
it.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. I'm Spa. It's like my favorite road course.
So what would you be driving? Where would you be driving if you could, and what would you drive on it? That's another good question. If you want to know more about track driving, please check out our YouTube channel. You can go to YouTube, just search We Are Motor Driven. If you want the direct link, it's youtube.com/c/We Are Motor Driven. You can also go to wearemotordriven.com, our website. But look there, you'll find a Blackwing video that Jennifer put together. You'll find our Spring Mountain video is there as well, I believe. So if you want to know what a track school looks like, a multi-day
OEM.
track school.
Also the lap series that we do.
And yes, and we have an entire series devoted to just track driving called The Lap. It is all there on our YouTube channel, so please visit that. And I want to thank again Randy for coming on. He is always such a consummate gentleman and just an amazing individual and just a legend in this space. So we can't thank him enough. I'd like to thank all of you guys. And this has just been so much fun to do this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe. Please throw us a comment. A review would be awesome as well. And we'll see you next time here on We Are Motor Driven.